NASCAR legend Hershel McGriff bought it new in 1970 and put nearly 90,000 miles on it. Now 95, he wants to pass it on to you. Chrysler only built 485 Hurst Edition 300 sin 1970. You might think this rarity would make them among the most expensive muscle cars ever made, but according to Automobil, transaction prices are typically under $50,000. Understandably, performance fans tend to focus on lighter, mid-size models and pawnee cars from the 1960s. Weight, after all, costs horsepower, and the more mass you have, the more power you need to move it. As one of Chrysler Corporation's full-size C-body models, the eponymous 1970300 Hurst model had a hard case to make as a muscle car. Its 4,200 plus pound curb weight gobbling up much of the motivational force provided by its 375 HP TNT 440 big block wedge. And yet, one look at the hunkered down, road-hugging silhouette of the 1970 Chrysler 300 Hurst Edition is enough to spawn daydreams of covering massive amounts of interstate at super-legal speeds in vault-like comfort. This is, of course, exactly what NASCAR Hall of Famer Hershel McGriff had in mind when he first learned of the machine when it was new. The car you see here, VIN CM23 UOC 203193, is destined to roll across the Meckham auction block in Glendale, Arizona, as lot number 80 on Friday, March 31, 2023. McGriff has owned it since new, and the odometer now shows 89,188 miles. That's a lot of smiles that will be hard to wipe away from this legend's face. Like many early pioneers of NASCAR, Hershel McGriff did things besides racing to earn a living. A businessman with timber and mining interests split between Arizona and his native Oregon, McGriff began racing in earnest in 1950 when he drove his Olds 88 from Oregon to Mexico to run in the first car Rapaniation. McGriff is famously quoted as saying, "The car only cost me $1,900 or so, and the purse winnings were $17,000. After winning the event, he drove the Olds 88 home in a move that would make most of today's drag week veterans blush with embarrassment. It's worth pointing out that with very few exceptions, trailers and car haulers for race cars were still decades off. For hot rodders, a car's reliability as built by the factory was still a major selling point, exemplified by a brand's success in endurance motorsports like stock car racing. While in Mexico, McGriff met fellow Carrera Panamericana competitor Bill France, who was the head of the nascent National Association of Stock Car Auto Racing, or NASCAR for short. After seeing him compete in and win the grueling race with scant resources, basic hand tools, and no professional crew, France convinced McGriff to run NASCAR, and later McGriff repeated the same feat by driving his Olds 88 to the East Coast, competing in a variety of France's events, and winning several Grand National races in 1954. By then, McGriff was a force to be reckoned with, and businessman Carl Kiekiefer, owner of Mercury Marine, was watching. Kiekiefer was a shrewd businessman, the first in NASCAR to put together the mega team concept: multiple teams, car haulers, extra cars, parts, and engines. Kiekiefer needed drivers, and his deep pockets allowed him to attract them by buying the best equipment available. He would famously lure Tim Flock to his stable for 1955 with a $40,000 signing bonus, unheard of at the time. In those days, that meant Chrysler's new Hemi V8 under the hood of its letter cars, like the Chrysler C300. Kiekiefer liked the cut of McGriff's jib and offered the Oregonian a spot as a driver for one of his Chrysler teams. McGriff was flattered by the offer, but demurred due to the time it would take away from his own business aspirations in the timber and mining industries. Though McGriff would go on to race a string of Plymouths and Dodges over the decades, he would never race a Chrysler. All of McGriff's 4 NASCAR Grand National wins would come behind the wheel of an Oldsmobile 88, with wins in the K&N Pro Series West coming mostly in Plymouths. Nevertheless, Kiekiefer's offer for the Chrysler letter car ride must have left a soft spot for the brand in McGriff's heart, because when the model's final letter car iteration came out for the 1970 model year as a Hurst conversion, McGriff knew he had to own one. He certainly would have been convinced of the Chrysler's reliability, borne out by the extent of its use over subsequent decades. By 1969, veteran high-performance pitchman Jim Wangers had already moved on from Pontiac fame, where he had helped ideate the GTO's PR campaign, to Hurst Performance Research, where he was executive VP. Finding all the ingredients readily at hand for a luxury muscle car model of the Chrysler 300, Wangers pitched Chrysler on the idea of a Hurst Edition letter car, with the notion that demand could support around 2,000 production units. These were built at Chrysler's Jefferson Avenue plant in Detroit, then shipped to Hurst's facility in Brighton, Michigan, for upgraded equipment, before being sent back to Detroit for final QC. Trivia: the 1970 Chrysler 300 Hurst Edition was most famous for being the mascot car for Hearst's Miss Golden Shifter, Linda Vaughn, who maintains her relationship with the company to this day. All 485 Chrysler 300 Hurst Edition cars began life as 1970 Chrysler 300 Series 2-door hardtops that were painted a Spinnaker white and received the Chrysler Imperial LeBaron's tan leather upholstery, bucket seats with 6-way power adjustment, heavy-duty suspension, power steering, power disc brakes, power windows, white leather tires, 3.23:1 axle ratio, IO1 light group, column-shifted 3-speed Torqueflite automatic trans, low-restriction dual exhaust, and the all-important 440 TNT big block wedge, putting out 375 horsepower. Around 40 cars would be built with Akansole-mounted shifters, well as a handful of convertibles. Cars were built with consecutive VINs in quantities of 12 to 15, before being shipped to Hurst for their final conversion. The production of Chrysler 300 Hurst Edition models would eventually be curtailed due to the deepening recession gripping the American economy, reducing output from 2,000 planned units to 485. Once at Hurst's facility, the cars were treated to gold-painted accents in traditional Hurst livery. Experts alternately report the accent color was Cadillac Byzantine gold or Sauterne gold iridescent, and given an arrangement of 21 chocolate brown or apricot decals. Part of the conversion involved replacing the hood and decklid quarter panel end cap with special lightweight fiberglass units and an integrated rear spoiler with the recessed airfoil. The decklid and spoiler eliminated the trunk lock cylinder, requiring a remote vacuum trunk release button to be incorporated into the glove box, with a backup mechanical trunk release under the dash. Special Hurst 300H emblems and chromed Chrysler lettering on the decklid were placed on the car. More cool trivia: the recessed hood locks on the Hurst Edition 300 hours are the same ones appearing on contemporaneous Hurst Olds 4-4-2 models. The 1970 Chrysler 300 Hurst Edition short, ephemeral history is in sharp contrast to Hershel McGriff's own. The 95-year-old's racing career is generally recognized as the longest in stock car racing history, beginning in 1945 and running nearly continuously, except for a 10-year break between 1955 and 1965, to focus on business and family until his final race at age 90 at Tucson Speedway in 2018. McGriff's personal Chrysler 300 Hurst Edition, unlike many of its siblings, has been well maintained and in regular use, making it a rare example of a continuously curated survivor. We would argue that the no reserve status on McGriff's Hurst Chrysler illustrates the seller's desire to ensure the continuity of the car as part of a living legacy. For some lucky bidder, Friday, March 31, 2023, is going to be a whirlwind day made from the stuff of legends. You surely won't want to miss the hammer coming down for this historic transaction on Motortrend TV and MotorTrend Plus. See live coverage times below. In the meantime, check out the extra photography in the attached gallery. To kick off the Car Craft YouTube video series, hosts Kevin Tetz and Jen McGann immerse themselves in the task of swapping a Gen 3 Hemi into a 1972 Dodge Challenger. And this isn't just any old Hemi, we're dropping a 707 horsepower Hellcat into the car and putting one of Tremec's brand new TKX 5-speed transmissions behind it. The Challenger is also getting a brand new coilover suspension and a brake upgrade. The goal is to make it run and drive like a new Hellcat-powered Challenger, but with the classy good looks of the original body.